The end of the world is here, on this continent surrounded by water. An island as big as the United States, 14 times the size of France, with only 3 inhabitants per square kilometre. A land of light, an Aboriginal world that the English named Australia in 1625. 26,000 kilometres of coastline with a wealth of beaches, bays, magical deserted primeval places. Surrounded on 3 sides by the ocean, Margaret River is a small peninsula nestling in a corner of paradise. Margaret River has drawn people from all over the world. They form a colourful kaleidoscope, a green, ecological, new age group united by the very particular attention they pay to this natural beauty. The sea is at the centre of their preoccupations. 2 months a year, whales come to give birth just off the peninsula's coast. Colonies of dolphins are based all along the seashore. As is the case everywhere, the catastrophic fall in fish numbers has endangered their marine friends. So the local community has mobilized itself to set up an underwater nature reserve around the peninsula. The project is on the verge of completion. Steve Mitchell is one of the main instigators of this vast program. A former fisherman who has moved into ecotourism, Steve was the first and only person to obtain a license that allows him to take tourists to meet his friends the dolphins. He believes that the only way to save the ocean and its creatures is to raise awareness among the general public.
Well, we definitely talk to the media, but I think the best way to advocate is that when you have people there and then, and they're there at the moment, they get the feel of the place. Yeah. They live it, they breathe it. Yeah. It becomes a part of them. We're all locals in our own right. Wayne's a local, I'm a local. Whether, we might be a 5-minute local. I've come through a period of my life where the ocean in this part of the world has been rich. It's just been rich, the resources that have been there, but now that's changing. And we can all see that, and we all understand that. It's not a matter of taking for you, it's a matter of
leaving something for your children.
Leaving something for your children. It's as simple as that. I think there's a fair amount of greed in the world now, and we have to change that thought pattern. We have to change that, and how we do that, it's a consensus of a thought that we all want to have that sustainability there.
Bottlenose dolphins live near the shore. About 250 have taken up residence in the bay of Margaret River. It's a good spot as food is plentiful and the food chain is balanced. The end of the day is a special moment. It's a time to enjoy the pleasures of the simple life. Everyone lets their thoughts go, lulled by the rhythm of the sea.
In fact, the young French.
It's funny, isn't it?
I thought coming into your life. I did. I honestly thought. From the age of, I guess, 12, and now I have what it's done to me. I can't with fitness. I can't. I just appreciate where I am, what I'm doing and what the waves are doing, and I've got this appreciation more so now than I've ever had for it. It's just being humbled by the surrounds of the ocean, the sound of the ocean. It's nature is at its rawest.
The surf is still one of Margaret River's main attractions. Surfing is a communion with the sea, the sensation of driving a motorless racing car, enjoying a pollution-free ride thanks to this continually renewed energy source generated by the tides. The people who indulge in this sport are the sentinels of the coast. They watch, educate, and share this healthy and green passion with the peninsula's visitors. Blair is one of them. Taught by his father on the coast of his native New Zealand, he first jumped on a board at the age of 8. He then discovered this region and decided to move here. Today, he's going to give a surfing lesson to a group of beginners.
One thing we talk about in the lessons is a buzz. You know, there's this, what they call in surfing is stoked. You know, they say I'm stoked, and it's a feeling of getting a really good wave, riding along. And just, you know, it's I guess an adventure type of, it's all across the board, and I guess an adrenaline thing, but a really good buzz. But the good thing about surfing is that it's all natural apart from the board you're on. It's a moving piece of energy, you know, it's come from thousands and thousands of kilometres, and you were just in that right position to catch it at that moment and ride along it and, you know, have the whole thing envelope over you and cover you and spit you out. I mean, you can't just, like they say, you can't describe that.
Margaret River is one of Western Australia's best-known winemaking regions. There are over 700 hectares of vineyard and 28 wineries. The ecological reputation of this small town has crossed the seas and attracts many tourists. They know if they come here, they will find work in a healthy and fair environment, enabling them to continue their travels. So they flock here from all over. The grape harvests are a godsend for them.
I'm from Korea.
From Japan.
From Germany.
Taiwan.
There is another form of fair work exchange here known as woofing. Started in the UK, the international woof movement offers volunteer tourists free accommodation with a host in return for a few hours farm work a day. Most of these young travellers combine the two, grape picking in the morning, woofing in the afternoon. It's another way of travelling. You get to know the locals and their culture through your work. A great variety of grapes is grown in the area, but the distinctive feature of the peninsula's wineries is their determination to move towards quality wines. And again here, the small community's green-mindedness has meant local growers now put the emphasis on quality rather than quantity. Séverine moved to Australia about 10 years ago. A wine expert trained in Bordeaux, she had no problem finding work on the peninsula. The Australians greeted her with enthusiasm as she was convinced this region was perfectly suited to organic viticulture.
We haven't sprayed the vines with weed killer, herbicide or pesticide. We don't need to dust the vines with sulfur or spray them with copper sulfate. There's nothing on them at all. I'm crushing the Tempranillo grapes that were picked yesterday and which I cooled overnight. This is at 8 degrees. I'm crushing them to extract all the flavour. You can extract more when they're cold. I extract the good tannins, aromas and flavours. Then I add yeast. I love doing this. It gives me real pleasure.
Lewin Estate is a model winery totally committed to the concept of organically grown wine. The estate owners have done their utmost to employ numerous nature-based strategies in their vineyards, such as planting fruit trees near the vines to attract the birds away from the grapes, or putting fibre bands around the bottom of the vines to stop insects climbing up them. Next, they opened a gastronomic restaurant. The setting is idyllic.
I don't want any dry Riesling, Chardonnays, top Chardonnay of Australia. Yeah, okay. We have only 3 for you today. We sold out of which one? White, okay. Just 1 or 2 glasses.
To promote their wines and the region, the owners did not stop at a restaurant and a tasting room. These former farmers believed cuisine and music would be a perfect accompaniment to the art of winemaking. So they built an outdoor auditorium with a capacity of 22,000. From the London Philharmonic Orchestra to Sting, countless musicians have performed on the lawns of Lewin Estate. In the 1960s, there was only one hotel in Margaret River. The surfing boom in Australia drew many young nature lovers to the peaceful district, while the new wineries provided a significant injection of capital into the local economy. It was at this point that the community of Margaret River reacted very intelligently. They asked themselves the right questions and decided to focus on quality, not mass tourism. Pauline MacLeod was behind this initiative. She used to run the local tourist office well before this small town became popular. In the 1980s, she witnessed the burgeoning tourist boom and devoted all her time and energy to turning the peninsula into a conservation area. The sharks of the real estate world no longer had access to the coast or the backcountry. Margaret River was saved.
The tourism industry worldwide was really focusing on sustainable tourism. Yeah. You know, like, let's look at visitor spend rather than visitor numbers. Yeah. And Margaret River grew immediately after the collapse of the tourism industry in Queensland, because Queensland had chased the dollar and numbers. So they chased the numbers and not the dollar, and they ended up in this position of what you call profitless volume, you know. Whereas Margaret River had that experience, had seen that experience and drove for sustainable tourism growth. So this is very, very, the community is very green down here. Politically, it's a green vote more than it is anything else. So you'll always be held, you know, accountable for the numbers you bring down, and that's at the shire level, at the community level. You're always answerable, and I suppose those forces keep things in balance.
travelling up Margaret River means journeying back to the town's humble beginnings. The peninsula was discovered in 1831. In 1876, there were only 3 houses along the river, and then woodcutters drawn by the thick forest covering the peninsula came to settle here. To get back to this life close to nature, Joy and Simon Ensor decided to build their bungalows at Margaret River's source. Their approach is totally in keeping with the district's ecological preoccupations. Small structures made from local materials, a reliance on solar energy, and identical sensations to those of the area's first settlers who moved here only 3 generations ago.
Most Australians have not patted a kangaroo, just to feel how soft their fur is, you know, and just to see birds feeding and playing in the bird bath, sitting in your outdoor spa under the stars, you know, in the evening sipping a glass of, you know, local wine, and just getting in tune with nature again, and just realising that a lot of our modern society is losing that rapidly.
In the early 20th century, Margaret River was known for the quality of its wool. As demand grew, the majority of local farmers turned to sheep rearing. Paul Brennan was born on this farm, as indeed his whole family has been for the past 3 generations. His great-grandfather was among the first pioneers to settle here. As there was no longer any money to be made in wool, he was forced to change direction.
Okay, everybody, can I fire up now? If they go a bit too fast, just get hold of your reins, sit down the saddle and draw back nice and low, and the horse will pull up for you. Well, these horses will stop, my friend, because they're well trained. And,
Passionate about horses since a very tender age and an Australian polo cross champion, he decided to turn part of his farm into a riding school. He offers a different kind of horse ride. At his school, you don't ride around a ring. You travel back to the past to meet the first settlers who came here in 1850. Playing farmers, herding cattle, being part of a real-life Australian Western, Paul offers visitors a taste of what he enjoys.
like, because we're in Australia, I mean, there's no point in us trying to make out we're living in California or Paris or Beirut or wherever you want to be. We live in Western Australia, we live in the southwest of Western Australia, so what we try and do is offer a really authentic Australian, but especially West Australian experience. You know, and we've got loads to offer around here. We've got a beautiful climate, loads of good things to do, as in, wineries, caves, surfing, whatever. And so what we do, just as flat's just a small part of it. And we, authentic Australian stuff's what we'd like to do.
When the British settled Australia as a penal colony, there were some 1 million indigenous people spread out over 500 tribes, each with its own language or dialect. For the country's first inhabitants, the arrival of the Europeans spelled disaster. By 1920, there were only 60,000 Aborigines left in Australia. In other words, a 96% decrease in population numbers. This led many of the world's anthropologists to describe what the Australians had done as a form of genocide. In fact, in May 1997, Sir Ronald Wilson, the then president of Australia's Human Rights Commission, declared, "We are convinced that what was done to the Aborigines meets the international law definition of genocide." Today, things have changed. Bill, who spent his entire childhood in the bush, now runs Margaret River's Aboriginal Cultural Centre. His purpose in life is to share his culture with the descendants of the Aborigines' oppressors. He begins with simple, basic examples that illustrate perfectly the extent to which his people are intimately connected to nature.
Commonly known as like the grass tree. You're not allowed to say blackboard tree anymore. This plant has been on Earth for 350 million years. So it's the link to Gondwana. And we have other ones 240 and 280. So they're the cycads from like dinosaur times. Grows about like centimetre a year. Last couple of rains, the last couple of years, it lay fairly dormant, connected to everything. So as the English came and they said, how do you get through over here and what's in the water there? Or what do you call that tree there? And we go, drall. And they go, jarrah. And we go, no, drall. And they go, jarrah. And we go, yeah, right there. And I'd hate to think that we could build a footprint of thousands of years ago to the occupation of the white fella here for 177 years in this state. It'd be pretty cataclysmic against one another, I think. Let's go on a little bit further.
At that time, we made sure everything was intact to pass on to our future generations. But while everybody's living in our country now, it's important for them to learn that respect. And mainly like learning the respect is how did Aboriginal people coincide with the environment. We say from the ocean right through to everything else is all interconnected. So while we don't understand why that little insect is so important, we break chains in the whole thing. And I think that's where, throughout the world today, is where we're entering food crisis and things like that, and global warming, fear to people, and learning the indigenous way, or indigenous countries throughout the world, is how they really adapted through those periods of time. And maybe that's going to be force us in the future to sort of look at each other a bit differently and try and make a better future for everything.
Better future. Bill is right. You have to put the traumas of the past behind you and focus on the future. The community of Margaret River understood this long before anyone else. In 1957, when they turned their peninsula into a natural park, ecology was not yet on the agenda. People were only just beginning to look into sustainability as a viable alternative to instant profit, the consequences of which are so destructive in the long term. For the people who live on this protected peninsula, these concepts were already an integral part of their daily lives and their concerns for the future. The seashore was closed to the public until 2001, when a 135-kilometre-long coastal path was opened. It is strictly forbidden to stray from the path that snakes along the Indian Ocean. Here, nature can grow undisturbed and be admired by all those who choose to do so. If you get the impression all the tourist activities, restaurants and hotels in these parts are environmentally friendly concerns, that's because the individuals managing them are unanimous and uncompromising when it comes to their convictions. Obviously, such things are not accomplished without difficulty. The climate of respect and well-being to be found in Margaret River is attracting increasing numbers of visitors as well as capital and development projects. But here, nothing is decided without the massive approval of the local inhabitants. Once a year, the community gets together on the seashore to celebrate the past year's achievements and discuss the projects to be undertaken in the coming year. The discussions are calm, the atmosphere relaxed. Even though the locals must remain vigilant, when it comes to defending their heritage and their way of life, they are seasoned veterans.